Evening, everybody. I'm Mayor Paul Horn, and I'm very, very happy to have this time with you this evening. I think this is our third update of the year. I know we have a few people joining us already. I look forward to more joining us, and also the fact that this video will be out there for others to see later on. I'm joined this evening by Taryn from our communications department and Shay from Valley Tech, and we're going to be with you for about an hour and a half this evening, or until we run out of questions. But let's jump into the slideshow, Shay, if you're okay with that. We have that up on the screen there. We're good to go. Thank you. All right, well, let's start, as we always do, with our traditional land acknowledgement and recognize gratefully that we are located on the traditional territory of the Stolo people, and specifically of 6 First Nations, the Lackamal, Samath, Kwantlen, Skowlitz, Mathqui, and Katzie First Nations, who share this territory with us. Over the next hour to hour and a half, I'm going to go through 3 steps with you. The first is try to give some of the highlights over the last year, and I emphasize some. There is always a ton going on in the city, and so I'm going to try, learning from last time, and keeping the presentation short. And if you have questions, I'll happily answer about other things that we don't cover here. And I'll point out that you can also get the report from Council by going to mission.ca and finding it there, and there's more items in there. I should also at this point actually acknowledge that while I'm the one speaking for you with you this evening, and speaking for all of Council, and I'm bringing greetings from them. We'll take a brief look then at what's going to be coming in the next year, and then open up for your questions. We've got a few right now, but would encourage you to add others in the comments, and Taryn will be conveying them to me later on. As I said, we'll go for about an hour and a half till 7:30, or until we run out of questions. All right, so a quick reminder of some of the strategic focus areas our council has brought to bear when we got elected in 2022. One of the very first things we did is get together as a group and begin looking at our strategic priorities. It's incredibly important that councils do this, because if they don't, they become really what I call maintenance councils, always waiting for a crisis or an issue and responding only to that. But when you take a strategic focus approach, you get more done. It doesn't always look like it, because you're not always building something. Sometimes you're in planning phases, sometimes you're in analytical phases, but you're always working towards much more focused goals. Council was responding to information we'd seen in satisfaction surveys, information we'd heard from our time on the campaign trail, as well as just our own experiences of living here and speaking with neighbors. So the 4 areas we decided to focus on were organizational resourcing, things like making sure we had the right number of staff, the skill sets within our staff, the staff retention, and health and wellness that we needed, and that they in turn had the equipment, technology, and space that they needed to do their job well and serve the community well. The second was parks and recreation facilities, with a focus on things like making sure that our parks were meeting modern expectations, that we were growing our parks and recreation facilities as we grow, and that we're making sure that there was an equal and equivalent distribution out there of facilities, so that people in rural areas weren't doing without as well. Industrial and commercial expansion, one that's particularly near and dear to my heart, because I think it's incredibly important for people to work closer to home. That has a major impact on affordability. People spend less of their money on the expenses associated with commuting. And of course, they spend more time with their family and in their community. They do have less impact on the environment. And we diversify the tax base, so there's less of a burden on residential homeowners. And finally, public safety and community wellness, which was a very central theme we heard from many people, making sure that our policing numbers keep up with growth, making sure that our fire numbers keep up with growth, making sure that we're addressing issues such as homelessness and untreated mental illness, making sure we're advocating to Fraser Health for resources that stay concurrent with our growth and changing needs. Along the way over the last year, the province has really created another priority, and it's been quite a consuming one for us, but one that we agree with. It's not just one for Mission, it's one for all municipalities in the province, and that is the challenge of addressing housing affordability. All 3 branches of government really will have a role in this, but at the local level, it'll come down to things like us amending our policies to make it more easy to have secondary suites, to make it easier to go through applications for building new homes homes and getting more density. And it'll be important for us to make sure that we build the infrastructure to serve this community, whether it's the sewer pipes under the ground or the buses and schools that serve areas, in which case we're working in partnership again with another branch of government, the Board of Education. So we'll speak about all 5 of those priorities as we go through the slideshow here. The first one, just to gain some highlights here, organizational resourcing. Over the last couple of years, we've been working earnestly, and most of this work, even though it's very, very involved, is probably not visible to the average person in the community around updating what we call our enterprise system. It's the software that runs the city. When I was first elected back in 2021, we were just moving paper around, literally physically, people walking paper files around, sometimes driving or couriering them between different destinations, often with Post-it notes and paper clips holding notes on them as a way of moving systems. And you'll recall, going back to that was creating real pinch points for everybody in the community and an exhausting experience for our staff. So the software that we had at that time was highly inefficient, outdated, and wasn't going to be able to be kept up to date. And so what we've been doing over the last couple of years is not only bringing in this new software, but in the last few months, we've been doing all of the systems change internally. That means training our staff, that means adjusting our processes. Right now, I met today with our project lead on this, Rob, and he has kept me up to date. And where we are right now is that our HR system is completely utilizing the enterprise system. Our public works system is partway through it, and we'll be going through a process over the next few months where there will be an opportunity for you, the community, to use that interface, for example, to report issues in your neighborhoods. The planning department is the one that's most active with this right now, and over the next month or so, we'll be moving toward the ability to completely track or take in applications online, which has been a big, big measuring stick for us here. Whether you're developing a property, whether you're asking for a building permit, whether you're looking for a business license or a sign permit, it should be possible to put your documents in through a city portal and to track the progress along the way. And one of the most important things is that planning departments and engineering departments, fire and rescue, just as 3 examples, often work multiple people from multiple teams on the same file. And this way, the documents can all be looked at by the team at the same time. So that will continue to roll out over the course of next year and will be fully embedded, we expect, in the early part of 2024. What you will see is the improved website for mission.ca. And of course, this is where more and more people are doing business with the city these days. There are fewer people who come in the front door to City Hall with every passing year. They want to be able to register, they want to be able to find documents, they want to be able to learn about our laws and policies all at the click of a button. And we've recognized that some of the things about our website are not really allowing that. For example, I think, Taryn, it's about 60% of our users are on our mobile phone users.
Yes, that's right.
And so the existing format doesn't work very well with mobile phones. I myself, just a few minutes ago, was trying to search a document, and it's difficult to do that. It's really hard for people who are not terribly experienced with City Hall to know where to find things. So all of that will improve over the first quarter of 2024. And the other thing that was really a learned lesson for us coming out of COVID was that if we didn't keep our employees well, we were going to have a number of problems. First of all, we would likely lose them to early retirement or to being, adopted by other communities rather than saying they were poached. Oh, I guess I did just say that. But we do, in fact, lose staff to other communities if we don't take care of them. And it rolls out for you as an experience where processes are slower because somebody is sick or somebody is on a leave or because we're constantly changing employees. So this was a really important part because we really do genuinely care about the people working in the city. And so staff and management have rolled out an employee wellness program, and that will be evaluated on an annual basis, or actually I think more frequently than that, and we'll update it as we go along. We're also looking at the space needs of the community, the staff team right now. As you may recall, it's been a challenge for us. We're in a very old building up here. It's already been expanded once. months, we renovated Welton Common. We have people at the Visitor Center, of course, at Fire Hall 1, at the Leisure Center, and a number of more and more people are working remotely for at least some of their job. And so working to figure out the best way to handle staff space and technology is a part of what we're working on as well. Area 2, Parks and Recreation Facility, really want to make a huge nod to my colleagues, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Davies, Councillor Gill, and Councillor Elias. All of the council have been advocates on this, but particularly those four. Councillor Elias has been a really good voice, I think, for young people with families. Councillor Gill has also been really tuned in, especially to what people in the north part of Mission are wanting. And Councillor Hamilton has really reminded us that the Centennial Park Complex has a tremendous amount of potential as a central function of our community. Councillor Davies has been really an advocate for modernization of our facilities, just to name a few. And so over the course of the year, at the beginning of the year, using grant funds, using money that we have acquired through our forestry, and using reserves we already had, we undertook to invest in a number of new parks and recreation initiatives. And I think it was in the neighborhood of, I want to say $10.9 million, Taryn. I don't know if that number sounds familiar for you, but I think it was that number. And that that money will go into a number of projects, but the one you will have started to see it in right now is the Clark Theatre when you go in there. Some of the renovations, you'll see things like new carpet and ultimately new seating, curtains and fixtures on the stage, new projection, new sound system, and some of the back behind the scenes things too. Like, for example, there really isn't a proper green room there, and that keeps us from getting good acts coming to the Clark Theatre. So we're doing a lot of work there, improvements in the lobby. The majority of that will happen in 24, but you'll see it rolling out over the next few years. We also hosted a number of community events, of course, Canada Day as always, but we had a brand new event, Shine Bright Mission. Taryn, you get your name out there a third time in this one because really you and the DBA were the ones who helped to make sure that was an incredibly successful event, and Claire Seeley and her team as well working on that. So really amazing event. And of course, for the first time since 2019, just a few days ago, Candlelight Parade was back and very, very well attended. And I think just a great launching point for the future again. You can see in the photograph here that we've also sat down and started planning with the Stay Falls community for the parkland that's in their neighborhood. So they have parkland that's already possessed by the city immediately to the west of Stay Falls Elementary. And we had an exceptional day with this group of people as they described what they had in mind for their community park. Very realistic, and it was amazing how many people not only aligned around the vision, but were willing to actually help contribute to the construction of the park. So we'll be moving forward with that in the coming year. And I should also mention, it's not on the slide, but we've acquired some parkland, the Emery Park area up in Cedar Valley, as well as we'll be working to finish a deal around a park at Stave Heights. That park is going to be a beautiful park. You'll have a view from the top of the hill and be able to walk down nature trails all the way through the area behind Heritage Park Secondary or Middle School, I guess, and all the way down through Heritage Park itself into the river. So a real centerpiece and a great way to interact with nature, rub shoulders with neighbors, and get out and enjoy the community. I want to give a huge nod to a couple of folks here as well. We've got a brand new manager of arts and culture, Mark Haney, who has hosted a number of creatives. He calls them creatives. I would call them artists, but I get to be in the group if it's just for creatives because I'm not an artist, but I guess I have some creative energy, so I have to appreciate his language. And he's done a great job of mobilizing that group and did some excellent work in looking at places in our budget where we could take money for funding that isn't being used efficiently to try and promote more of the activities and events and engagement for people who enjoy the arts out there. And George Davidson has also done an exceptional job of walking us through a plan for our Clark Theatre. So big nods to them and to their entire team. Mark came here with a group of people, community folks who exist in our Parks and Recreation Department already, who have just mobilized to create this, for the first time ever, really robust, in my opinion, city arts and culture team that will work well with groups that exist in our community, like Missions Arts Council. All right, next slide. Industrial and commercial expansion is a huge issue, a huge thing for us. The Waterfront Revitalization Master Plan, I know it seems quiet to you, but there's a ton of working going on in this, including lots of networking with the landowners down in the area and with the province. And so the province has really come aboard. They recognize that genuinely this is a world-class project. It has stimulated some particularly momentous things. For example, the province is working with us to finally complete the design of diking on the east side of the waterfront. So that's the area that would start at roughly where Mission Harbor Wharf is and go all the way to where the land rises again at the east end of the waterfront. And that is something we've needed to be helped with for many, many years. As you know, whenever there's a threat of flood, we have to bring out a tiger dam and essentially shut down access to that area. So we're working with the province, we're working with landowners in that area to do that. Similarly, we have moved forward with approving some improvements to the Lane Creek Pump Station, which will help reduce the chance of flooding in that area. And we were recently told some exciting news from the Ministry of Transportation of Infrastructure, who have demonstrated genuinely what I would call a passion for working with us on this project. If you're a history student of Mission, you know that the bridge was built and completed in 1973. And at that time, traffic all went to the east instead of to the area that now most people go, where it goes to the northwest up towards where Cedar Street is. And that eastern abutment was never supposed to take a dog leg at Horn Street. It was supposed to go straight through up until it hit the highway. So almost 50 years ago, that was the plan. The land still, much of it in the hands of the city and in the Ministry of Transportation, but that idea of a true bypass has set on the side for many years. So this fall, we were told by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure that they were going to pick up their pens again and begin a South Mission integrated transportation study. And what was amazing and remarkable was that instead of just looking at whether or not they completed that bypass, they're also looking all the way, not just from Norrish on the east, but back on the table is the conversation about bypass out to Oliver Street on the west. So Oliver Street is where our RCMP station is. So that conversation had not been raised for some time. We expected we might get to that as sort of a phase 3, but they're going right ahead and looking at the whole thing together right now. And the idea of integrating it as a transportation study means looking at also investing in transit-oriented design, using that area in the waterfront to have an enhanced transit experience so that a bus exchange might intersect better with, for example, West Coast Express, and have rapid bus lanes and other ways to help people move in and out from a better hub than what we currently have near the library. And as you may have heard, the province is eager to help with developing housing and commercial opportunities around that sort of development. So it's not on the slide, but the South Mission Integrated Transportation Study is one of the biggest pieces of news that we've had in our community for some time. And hats off to our two MLAs, Pam Alexis, Minister of Agriculture, and Bob Deeth for Maple Ridge Mission, who have been huge advocates in this. We also recognize that Mission needed to bring back its development corporation. We had a development corporation here in the early 2000s. At that time, it was a fairly minor affair, meant to operate some of our businesses, our buildings, I should say. But here we have now created a new one, Mission Bridgehead Investment Corporation. Feedback from the business community has been exceptional. And the wonderful thing about these two pieces together is that they are working very well. The Waterfront Revitalization Master Plan recently received 3 Canadian Economic Development Awards and an international award, and was actually asked to come and be a showcase presenter at MIPIM, which is an international conference focused on international real estate investment on a major scale. So that's a value of $15,000, where we'll be in front of investors from all around the world. And that matters because the aim of the waterfront strategy has never been for the city to acquire the land and pay for all that infrastructure. The role of the city is to facilitate development, and in the process to do something similar to what you'll see in Port Moody's Newport Village or Steveston, or in the recent downtown revitalization in Chilliwack. The other thing that all of those projects have in common is not only are they funded by the private sector contributing community amenities as part of that work, but they all have investment companies or economic development corporations run by the city. So Mission Bridgehead is the company created by the city. It is not funded from taxes. It's funded from vestigial lands that we own. And the aim here is to really be able to promote the waterfront and other economic development in our community, to invest utilizing some of these underused lands, and to partner in a really agile way with developers that do demonstrate an interest in coming down here. Last thing on this slide is that we were even further happy to hear again from the province that they have approved monies to not only improve the Glasgow overpass in terms of the filling and painting you've seen last year, but finally to help us with the renovations that we needed to the intersection at the north and south ends of that Murray-Glasgow overpass, so that trucks will be rerouted out of the downtown and will now use the bypass route. That RFP or request for construction companies went out just a few weeks ago, and the work is expected to be done in early 2024. That was music to our ears, and again, really thanks to the advocacy and partnership of our two local provincial representatives. I want to point out to people that that's the short-term solution. We don't expect the Murray-Glasgow overpass to be the solution in the long term, but this is a good first step that will help us until we're able to get the bypass completed. I'll also throw in a couple of other things here, and that is very happy to say that Council is near adoption of the Cade Bar lands up here in the area of Cedar Valley. That's another 20 or so acres of development for industrial lands, and that will include a contribution of lands for the Cedar Valley Fire Station. You'll have noticed Hatzick industrial lands improving thanks to the help of our Economic Development Office, and 150,000 square feet of construction being currently done right now down on Nelson Street, down near the Silver Creek Business Park, and about 50 or 60,000 of that will be put out to lease, with the rest of it going to a major producer. And other announcements are expected shortly, where we've met with some very significant business partners coming to the Mission community, and major job implications for that. All right, public safety and community wellness is the next one. Last year, Council hired 4 new firefighters and began operating the medic truck that you can somewhat see in this photograph. That medic truck is there to do 2 things. The first is to be able to respond very quickly to medical emergencies. As you may have heard, the province has struggled to find enough BC ambulance paramedics and to have service respond as quickly as we would like. That, combined with the opioid epidemic, has meant that our firefighters have really seen a dramatic change in the nature of their work. And the nature of that work has become very, very challenging for them. It means that they are always hopping, and the amount of overtime that we were spending on firefighters was rather remarkable. And even more importantly, the toll it was taking on them was remarkable. We were having firefighters pulled in off their days off. So this has allowed us to reduce that overtime, to have a better distribution of work, and to respond effectively to the medic truck, to medical emergencies. We were aware that last year was a terribly difficult year for people financially, so we phased it in over 2 years, and that's part of the reason why the tax this year included paying for these new firefighters. We approved a community wellness strategy that has brought all of the community wellness partners, social agencies, healthcare, and education, as well as others, to the table. And we're actively putting in place the strategy to deal with some of the issues you see out there, such as homelessness. And that had needed to be done since 2009, I believe, and particularly after COVID. There were a couple of attempts to get this work going during COVID, but it was incredibly difficult. So getting through that work over the last year has been a major milestone, and big thanks to Kirsten Hargraves and Roberta O'Brien from our team who helped to do that, and to all of the community partners who helped. We did some improvements to rural roads in a couple of areas, particularly up in North Mission around Dewdney Trunk and Keystone. We did that in partnership with ICBC. Some also in the neighborhood of the sports park, with more to be done in that area. We've built multi-use paths on 14th Avenue and, of course, along the 7th Avenue corridor. And we've also done some work to improve sidewalks in the area of Cherry Street and a few other places where there were long-standing gaps in sidewalks. We've done a number of improvements to paving to upgrade, and you have probably noticed them mostly along 14th Avenue. We brought in a new RCMP strategic plan. We have some new members coming to the community, although these are not new hires from new funding. These are people being filled in positions right now. Had the pleasure of meeting a couple of new local cadets the other day, and the RCMP strategic plan will include new hiring over the next few years. And we're going to be building an urgent care center, Fraser Health will be, and that's coming to help take pressure off of our emergency ward that will be located down at the Junction Mall. And work continues on the CAT scanner, which we helped to fund last year at Mission Memorial Hospital. In this final area, housing and the environment, we had a record year last year. We have never had more homes built in Mission than last year. And in fact, we built more homes in that year than any other Fraser Valley community, 895, and a very significant number of them were multifamily developments, as I'm sure you noticed. That continues. We have a building going up right now on Fletcher near the hospital. We have active applications in for further of those buildings down on Heard Street. You see that the affordable housing complex is being built right now on Heard Street in what was Hume Park, or is still Hume Park, actually. And we have another one that will be being built and that will include additional parking and a parkade down near the library. So just a few of those. And of course, we have worked with the a number of agencies and BC Housing to try and accelerate the amount of supportive housing we have in the community. So we're working with More Than a Roof to hopefully have them be funded by the provincial government to operate this the affordable housing complex right across from the archives and library. That's nearly complete. It's 92 units with both a community kitchen, community laundry, and other community space in the bottom. We're working with Mission Community Services to help fund a foundry coming to Mission and hopefully housing with that as well. We're working with the Anglican Church and MQHS Housing Society. We're also working with other faith-based operators to try and bring more housing into our community and supportive housing in particular. And so we're optimistic all of those will happen, and we'll keep working on that. We have a great housing coordinator in Dina K. Benno who updated us recently on a number of new housing strategies and plans, and we'll be doing some workshopping on that in the new year. But those are all, she's been mostly active in helping to submit those applications. Last year, we also revised the developer contributions that come when people build in our community. Every 5 years, the province required us to update what are called DCCs, development contributions. And those contributions go into things that I would call sort of the hard infrastructure, roads, sewers, waters. And the idea is that developers are paying for the portion of growth that they create. But we've always had, or for many years have had, what we call a CAC as well, community amenity contributions, where we've asked developers to pay a per door amount to help pay for the softer infrastructure, things like parks and libraries and recreational facilities. But we hadn't updated those in, I think, about 10 years. And so they have significantly increased over the last year to help reduce the burden and help create on taxpayers and help create more of a source of revenue. We just found out about 3 weeks ago that the province has brought this kind of a program in across all municipalities. So we were a bit ahead of the game there, but we will have to go back and do further revisions in 2024 to comply with their new regulations. I'll also state that one of the most important things that's just happened on Monday evening here, and that is that after many years, we have finally approved a secondary suite registration program, and I hope that this gets out there to people. If you have a currently unregistered or unauthorized suite in the city of Mission, as of Monday evening, we have made it easier for you than ever to have your suite conditionally registered and approved. All you need to do is go online, pay a small fee, submit a document, and in minutes you will be done. The fee is $100 right now. I think it goes up to $150 if you delay until April 1st. And the window closes, Taryn, when's the window close? Is it June 1st?
Window closes on April 2nd.
On April 2nd. So if you have between now and April 2nd to get your get your suite registered. Sorry, is that correct?
April 1st
Until April 1st. Okay, so you have until April 1st to get your suite registered. Why you should care about that is that if your suite is unregistered after that date, then the city at that point is going to undertake a mandate around those unregistered suites. So we are really not getting out and inspecting every suite. We're undertaking with you that you verify that your suite is legal and that your suite is compliant with our bylaws around things like parking. Why do we do it? Because we really wanted to do two things. First, we want an accurate registry of secondary suites in our community so that we can appropriately fund resources such as transit in your area. We'll be phasing out some of the cumbersome programs that people currently have around exemptions and normalizing the fees people pay instead of double billing. The aim here, and this is what the province has asked of us, is to have houses be full, have people use their houses to more full capacity and help people to afford their homes, whether they're the renter in the suite or the person trying to afford a mortgage in today's economy. And the second major advantage in this is that we will be helping to incentivize water programming, a water meter program, I should say. So we are giving people who are registering their suites first crack at water metering, and you'll get a discount on that as well, so that we're helping to reduce the cost of our water infrastructure, and you yourself will save money by having a water meter. I think I've captured most everything. Did I skip anything under the last year that you can think of, Taryn? All right. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming in 2024, and again, lots of other stuff. Planning. I'm with you if you say, okay, when does the planning end and where do we start building things? There's always planning going on in cities. I have to tell you, cities are like plate spinners. One department is building something, another department's in the midst of its planning. And that right now has to do with two of our departments, and it's really important that you're engaged with the first one. We understand that the community wants us to update our parks, recreation, and culture, activities, and facilities. And over the early part of next year, we'll be looking for engagement from you as citizens, as users of our parks, and as people involved, for example, with sporting associations and other groups that use them, so that we're really making sure our parks are planned for the future in a way that meets your needs. I hear constantly from people that they want certain amenities. The other day, I was talking with folks who were interested in seeing us improve our disc golf amenities. I heard from BMX people the other day and mountain bikers. I've heard from people who play cricket. I heard from people who want walking tracks. And I hear, of course, from organized sports groups. So really important that all of those people come to the table and we can lay out a plan and think about the way it will be paid for over a 5 to 10 year cycle. The official community plan is also being updated. This isn't the full update. It's been about 5 years since we did this. What's really important here is that we'll be looking at neighborhood plans in a way we've never done at the same time. And particularly, we're interested in three areas. The area along the Lougheed corridor from about Nelson all the way to Stave Lake Street, where we're seeing increased interest in mixed-use development, similar to what's been done there at Wren and Raven. There isn't really parkland or schools and that sort of thing in that area, so we need to really think about how everything fits together. Lots of value in that type of development because obviously people get to live close to the amenities they use every day. It means that the transit will be better subscribed to. But we do have questions we need to address. So that's an area we'll be focused on. Similarly, the area around our hospital and how we can enhance it as a healthcare area. And then something a bit unusual. We know there's pressure in our North Mission rural areas, the Stave Falls and Steelheads of our community. And so we're going to be undertaking neighborhood planning there to help those communities define their future in a way that preserves the rural feel and the engagement with nature that matters so much. So stay tuned for those as well. In terms of upcoming city projects, it has been an arduous process to try and find a home for the pickleball folks, but you can see that Wren Park has finally been chosen as a site for the outdoor expansion of facilities, and that park will see some other upgrades, as will many other parks out in our rural community, including places that right now don't have much of a use in their park, and we mentioned State Falls Park earlier. We will be continuing on the multi-use path that you've seen on 14th Avenue, and it will actually make its way into Centennial Park up there. And Centennial Park, over the course of the next year, will have other improvements, including a cover on the lacrosse box, and that facility will grow to become a multi-use facility, able to accommodate basketball, pickleball, badminton, lacrosse. And we will also be really trying to realize the idea and vision that Councillor Hamilton has brought to us, which is a more fully fledged complex using Centennial Park and that whole neighborhood down to the leisure center, so that we can have people truly enjoy Centennial Park, whether it's going there for Christmas activities or finding a more permanent, well-outfitted home for the farmers market that is now there, just as a few examples. All right, let's go to question and answer, and we're going to move off the slideshow in just a moment, but let me just tell you how we'll do Q&A. I'm going to do what I can to answer your questions about policy and council direction. No question is too tough for me tonight. If there's a question that's too technical, I will probably do my best to or take it and have it noted so that we can get staff to answer it. We'll post the answers on our website and social media. And I'll also hear your feedback, whether the comments that we later on take and bring back to council, or whether or not they're shared with us through Taryn tonight as a question or something that I can reflect on back to you. And so with that, I'm going to ask Shay to take down the video, or sorry, the show, and we'll just answer questions. And I'll go to Taryn next. And Taryn, what's the first question that we have?
Okay, well, we have a few questions on the discussion so far. We have one related to business and the rising cost of commercial rents in Mission. And the question is, our commercial rents have doubled in the past year and a half. There's no control like in the residential rentals. If this continues, businesses will need to leave the community, and this will take away jobs. So the question is council aware of this? Are they concerned about it? What are actions that are council's considering?
We are aware of it, and we are concerned about it. And in particular, we're concerned about it in the downtown area, where it seems as though all of the investment that the community did in that downtown revitalization, and it was done in partnership and good faith with the DBA, has led to landlords sometimes inflating rent or adding triple net when they didn't used to do that. There is a limited amount that we as a council can do to try and reduce rent per se, but I think the number one thing we can do is help to increase the supply in the community. And that's why this is such a priority for us. I mentioned it in my presentation that there's a real demand to have mixed use development. And one of the reasons why retailers and commercial and professional people in the marketplace want that is that their market is right there. They can come down an elevator or a set of stairs or walk down a street and be in those businesses. And that's the model I think more and more people want to live in now. It's an urban experience that works for a lot of folks, and it's one that uses resources efficiently. So I think we want to definitely see that built form, and we already have made it a priority in our community to fast lane developments that are retail and industrial, or commercial and industrial nature for that purpose. We're also working with the Chamber of Commerce on business retention strategies and helping to get a better idea of the data that tells the story of what businesses need, and not just across the community, but in specific hotspots, or looking at their geolocation and being able to target resources there. We're also trying to make sure that we are helping in the marketing and events portion of things. So working with the DBA and other areas around making sure that when we do something like a candlelight parade, it's not just an event that brings people out in the community, but also brings people in proximity to businesses in a way that will actually help bolster their sales and their business. And that's why, for example, this year, the candlelight parade was moved to a Saturday and was moved earlier so that people could go down and spend a day in that area. Enhancing the economic development function, our enhanced marketing work, working with the chamber, accelerating the amount of retail space that we have. Those are all the things that I would say are some of the biggest priorities for the community in helping with this particular issue.
Okay, and moving to a question that we have on YouTube, our live stream on YouTube. If you have a secondary suite that the city is aware of and is already metered, do we still need to register?
I actually don't think you. I don't think you do. Or Taryn, you're the one who knows the answer to that because you help with the communication. So
Yes, you do. You would still need to register. So the details on that are on mission.ca/suites, secondary suites, and you can find the details about that.
Okay, so if you've already got a suite, and I think there's an annual process where people say that they're keeping their suite. So it's the same process for those folks. Is that right? Okay, great. Thank you.
What is happening with the Cade Bar Industrial Park?
Cade Bar Industrial Park is at third reading. It's waiting for the last few details to be done for adoption, but that should be done soon. And it's expected to move forward in the next little while. And so you'll see that there is servicing going to that site. That's why there's so much residential development along Tunbridge there, because the servicing will come along that thoroughfare. So it's also stimulated a bunch of housing builds in that area, but it is proceeding.
Now, in terms of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, we're doing the strategic plan, we're doing the update, but there's a question if there are any plans in the near future for more sports fields.
That's all part of that Parks, Recreation, and Culture master plan that we're talking about. And I don't want to get too far ahead of it and saying, what should be in it. But I think intuitively we all know we need one. And the question becomes where and when. We met with the school board not too long ago and talked about whether or not the timing and location might work with a new build around the high school. But so much is left unknown there. But I would certainly be hopeful that we could work and talk about that. That would be a logical location. I think our first priority, this is speaking now as an individual because council hasn't seen a plan, will be on building facilities that we don't have at all at this point. But I think it's absolutely clear that we need more turf fields, and I think there's also a desire for a proper sports track. So I think those are in the future. The specific question of when has yet to be determined.
Perfect. And then we had some questions on the Facebook post regarding accessibility in the community, regarding ramps, buildings, sidewalks. Do you have any comments related
Absolutely.
to accessibility? And
I think I know who this is probably from, and I'm glad to hear from him.
he has a second question kind of connected, is related
why don't I
to
get to the second
inclusive
question
housing.
second, if that's okay. So I think that the community, we recently formed what we call the MADE Committee, Mission Accessibility, Inclusion, Diversity Committee, and we have currently got out there right now, we're looking for the members of that committee, and we'll ask Taryn to maybe share more of that information via our social media. But that committee is going to be charged with bringing in our accessibility plan. That accessibility plan was due at the provincial government in September, but we've been in communication with them, letting them know we're going through some committee revisions. And so we will probably, and I just spoke with staff about this the other day, work in two stages, do an initial plan and then go through that plan and add more detail later on. But to the folks out there who are interested in this, we're working actively on that right now, and it's a priority. Will be one early for 2024 to have that plan in place. And that plan will basically look at where in our community we know we need to do work to improve things like ramps, letdowns, accessories to things like, for example, crossings for people who are visually or auditorily impaired. So that's coming. Second question was?
Related to inclusive housing.
Right. So inclusive housing, again, the idea of supportive housing, the idea of housing that is going to have more supports is something we continue to work on. But again, I think I know the asker, and there is not any specific project out there right now where somebody is developing housing that is particularly well suited to people who have really the limited incomes from folks who are on people with disabilities as income assistance. We went and met with the minister, Sheila Malcolmson, and We're heartened by the fact that she says they're working on bringing those numbers up and having a better formula around how the funding goes. But it's going to continue to be an issue, and it's going to continue to be one where we're doing some further advocacy. And our housing coordinator has been asked through our council to try and not only get those units built, but ask of developers that they partner with organizations like MACL and others who are expert in inclusive housing, to have housing agreements that allow people to provide base touching and other supports. The design of the suites need to be thought of as well. So I don't have any imminent project that I sure wish I did that I could talk about with this, but that's the situation right now. I will follow up on this one though, because it'll be interesting to know whether the more than a roof application, the 92 units on Second, would include some of those suites. I'd be surprised if they don't, but let me find out more about that. And Taryn's taken note of that.
Perfect. And there was also a question about how many women are we aware of that were turned away from Sarah for women?
I was just looking at at the numbers the other day, and they're extremely troubling. I don't have them sitting in front of me, but I've also looked at the point in time numbers that are coming before the Regional and Corporate Services Committee of the FERB tomorrow, and both of those are incredibly troubling. The numbers are growing. We right now, on any given night, shelters are rarely at complete capacity, about 96%. And that sounds like, oh, well, we have enough space. But the opposite is true. We actually have more than 50% of people who don't use shelters, even when they are completely unable to find safe housing. And of course, a shelter is very, very far away from what you and I might consider to be suitable housing. So we're deeply concerned about this, and that's part of the reason why we're working with Sarah for Women on building new housing in the existing Santa Rosa site. And that will include program space as well, as I understand it. So that's one of the projects our housing coordinator is working on with them. And I think it has a very good chance of being approved, but we're certainly got our fingers crossed, and I can tell you that we will be very active if it isn't approved. That's a huge demand for us.
This one is related to youth and students. What new industries are coming to Mission that might help students in Mission with acquiring jobs? I've heard that there are some bigger businesses coming.
I'm in a bit of a challenged position just because I don't know whether or not I'm in a position to say what the names of certain companies are. That's their proprietary information. Certainly, I've met with some businesses that are coming to Mission that will be big employers or have opportunities here. But I don't know that they're specifically aimed at any particular demographic by age. I do think that in a general way, we have to keep on continuing growing opportunities for employment, such as at Cade Bar. I think the lands down at Hatzick can be more optimized. I think there are areas in the North Mission area that there are some limited but suitable uses for employment lands up there that might be opportunities. But I'm not going to reveal the names of any particular employers right now. But I will also point to the fact that we're really excited that the work is continuing and will be finished in the spring of 2024 on the development of the new UFV campus down that adjoins Heritage Middle School, and so Heritage Park Middle School. So that will be another opportunity for youth. But I think I can reveal that I think it's widely known now that Magnuson Ford is coming to Mission, but I don't think I will want to go into any further than that, but I'll ask our economic development officer if he has a bulletin he can put out in terms of where some folks may be willing to say, hey, we're here. We'll also note that Ocean Trailer came to Mission in a huge way, and that is something that's happened over the last year and a half. I was really grateful to be at their grand opening early in the year, and they are a major employer as well. So they're already here, but they've been doing very, very well as well.
Great. Now, we have had a couple questions about the 7th Avenue Greenway. Do you want them at the same time or one at a time?
Whatever works. Condense them, whatever works.
Okay, well, one is about the current phase and then one is about the second phase. So the first question is, what specifically will you do to assess the functionality of 7th Avenue since adding the curbs and the bike lanes?
So what council's resolved at our not the most recent meeting, but the meeting before that, is that it's basically an all stop after the completion of that phase one. And we'll be asking staff, we have asked staff to track all of the incidents along the way and to keep us aware of any changes that they make and suggestions that they may come out of that with in terms of improvement. I don't think they'll wait for council approval to make some of them. They already have made some of them in terms of curve design, markings, and signage. So we'll be looking at that data finding there. Just as recently as earlier today, I was speaking with folks about the design here. I know I was asked at a recent council cafe, is this the same type of greenway that other communities have? And yes, there are greenways like this, such as on 207th in Maple Ridge and Harris Road in Pitt Meadows and 100th Avenue in Surrey. It was another one, others that wind through New Westminster. So there are communities that have embraced this. The question for me will be, are people used to them after a year? Some of them are on busier roads. Harris, for example, and Pitt Meadows and 207th are fairly busy roads. But others are on quieter roads and wind through communities. So we'll take a look at all of that over the course of the year and make adjustments as necessary. Phase 2, you wanted to ask about, Taryn?
Yeah, there's a question about funding for phase 2 of 7th Avenue Greenway, and where is it expected to come from if there is a phase 2?
Right now, there isn't a plan to begin phase 2. Again, we asked staff to lay down their pencils because we wanted to find out what worked and what didn't work. Interestingly, I think council was much more happy with the way the multi-use paths on 14th Avenue have looked, and the section of the Greenway that begins at Grand and goes to about Talbot has also been, I think, well received by council. It's the smaller segments, the islands, the painted parts, the so forth that council, I think, is struggling with, and members of our community sometimes struggle with. It's also the fact that it took some time. So I realize I'm not yet answering the question, but I will. And so the reason we set down our pencils is because we want to find out what we can do to kind of perhaps merge some of those projects. This current project was funded entirely from federal and provincial funds, so it was about $2 million. 1.5 of those came from the federal government and half of it came from the provincial government. And if we were going to move on to a phase 2, we would look for the exact same thing, go looking at active transportation funding. This is new to Mission, but it is actually not new anywhere else, and it's something that provinces and the federal government are actively funding. The idea is to intersect active transportation with transit, and as much as possible to get people moving around out of their cars in ways that keep people fit, that are affordable, and hopefully reduce the amount of cars on our streets, and also to help slow down cars so that people feel safer when they're using bicycles, mobility scooters, walking their kids in carriages, using skateboards, and so forth. So the short answer to that question is that I would expect that if council chooses to lift the pencils again, the first part of that will be to look for funding at other levels of government. I don't, however, see that as one of our 4 key priorities. I also don't think that right now, with us not knowing exactly what's going to happen with the high school, that it's top of mind or front and center for us. And so at this point, we are mostly interested in trying to do what we can to make the current phase 1 work as well as possible, and we'll see where that takes us. The multi-use pathway on 14th Avenue will get completed, and we've suggested some ideas for how we can improve that, and I think it'll inform how we might move forward later on. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, and then there's also one more question related to the snow clearing plan for 7th Avenue. Are you aware of what that plan will look like? Will the snow from the bike lane be plowed? Where will the snow go?
I'd have to get our staff to give the full details on that, but yes, I do know that the staff have looked at that. That was part of what was incorporated into the design, as was things like garbage pickup and bus stop reallocation and so forth. So I think that information, if it isn't already on the Greenway page, should be added perhaps, Taryn, and we can answer that question more for people. But yes, the question about, I know there's been a lot of narrative about this. Excuse me for a second, folks. Excuse me. And I certainly understand it. The length of time, for example, for construction has been a challenge from my perspective, and in particular, the effect it's had on the businesses located on the north side of 7th between Talbot and Grand. Also, some of the features, as we said, I know that council hasn't loved them. Residents haven't loved them. I don't think Shay loves them. And so we know that they're affecting folks down in that neighborhood. But I do think it's important for people to understand that this is not something that we've created out of the blue. It's built to a standard, and things like garbage and bus stops and snow plowing are all considered as part of this. But I'll remind people as well that we understand that every single time that you put a plan in action, you know you're going to have to make adjustments. That's the truth for any organization, whether it's a company or a city. And so we will make adjustments along the way.
Great. Do you know what the status is of the Mission Horse Club lease?
I don't know where exactly it is. I met with them a while ago. They're working with our staff right now, and that they're hopefully navigating through the renewal of that lease.
There's also a question related to...
I'll pause. I want to go back to that question for a second. I think I sometimes when I hear the question, I think, what else might be going on with that question? This is one of them. Council doesn't have any intention for anything for that land other than the horse club. So if the concern is that the land is going to somehow not be with the club, or the club itself won't be supported to continue, I don't think anybody has any interest in that at all. I think the aim is to get that done and have the club continue its functions, and potentially even look at how we can work as part of that recreational facilities plan to see if we can improve what they've got up there.
And now there's a question related to the trade show in France, and why council is wasting money to go to France.
Okay, thank you so much. I was hoping we'd get asked this question. So the trip to the trade show is worth $15,000. It was a prize won from because of the fact that we were successful in winning Economic Development Association of Canada awards for the waterfront proposal. And so what it does is it gives us front and center marketing at what's called MIPIM. I mentioned it in my presentation. That's an opportunity to put the presentation in a high-profile way in front of 20,000 of the world's most active real estate investors. These are folks who go to these events with the intention of investing in projects on this scale. And so the $15,000 is money that was in the existing waterfront budget for the purpose of the $15,000 that we'll contribute so that we can send in a group there is part of that budget for marketing. So that money would have been spent on something, whether it was a trade publication or video production. What we're doing right now is gathering input from local landowners, the Ministry of Transportation, First Nations, so that when we go there, we have a really exceptional presentation, and that we can demonstrate to folks that this is a place where they are going to want to come and invest. And this is incredibly important because, again, people need to understand that the waterfront plan is not about the city buying 300 acres of that land and financing the development. It's about having private sector investors come there, invest in the land, and then as they build out, build community amenities. That's very commonly done in other communities that have had successful waterfronts. And so it's $15,000 being paid from our existing waterfront budget to help market that and accelerate the waterfront plan. And so that's the answer to the question. I know there's been some misconception that we're going there on a fact-finding mission. That is not the reason we're going there to promote and sell mission. It's that simple, and we'll be measuring our success in leads. We've spoken with other Canadian communities that have gone to this conference, and they've encouraged us to go because they have found that it accelerated their projects and brought investment in. That's the rationale we're using here.
Okay, and now on to tax increases. With the upcoming tax increase, even more for people that are getting utility services, why is council not looking at conducting a core services review? And then the person has shared about the statement of financial information, stating that senior staff are getting wage increases.
Okay, so I'm going to break that into three things. How do we get to the 6.19, core review, Sophie, don't let me forget. So how do we arrive at 6.19? Well, I mentioned it earlier. Last year, in order to buffer the tax blow, because you remember last year, the CPI was 6.7%, I think, at the end of the year. I think December was 6.9%. And so we wanted to try and have a tax increase that was lower than that. We got to just over 5 last year, below the rate of inflation. But in order to do that, some of the expenses associated with the programming, particularly the new firefighters, were carried over into this year. And that accounted for about 4% of the 6.19 that you have. As you recall, you'll have seen the news story where more than 10% in spending packages and initiatives were put before council, but council did not approve on most of them, and at the end of the day actually made some service reductions and service reallocations that amounted to about just over 2% in new spending to help bring in a court liaison officer, which unfortunately was something that we were forced to do. It was downloaded from the province. And to try and do some of the things we needed to do, for example, to address servicing our internet services, for example, here. Nothing terribly exciting in that, although there was some reallocation of funds for culture. At the end of the day, that 6.19% isn't something I would say I was super thrilled with, but at the end of the day, I think it's where most communities are going to be. I've spoken with our colleagues around the Fraser Valley, as well as some communities in Metro, and they are all looking at roughly that 6 to 7%. On the utilities side of things, the truth of the utilities is that when it comes to what it costs to operate the utilities, it's a pretty simple mathematical equation. And the fact is that the water, the sewer, the drainage infrastructure, the landfill, they're largely the cost of doing business. And so those increases that you saw there, while they are more painful than I would like them to be, they are the base of what we can actually ask of people. We couldn't go lower than that without deferring them or compromising the service quality. When I was on council the first time around, the utilities at that time had gone through a number of years of 0% budgets. And what that meant was that there was a sudden catch up and there were 15% budgets to do that. And I swear I would never want to do that again. We need to make sure that the real cost of things is what we're doing. The second question was about core reviews. And to be honest with you, I get asked this by people, and I think that I'm not quite sure that they have the same understanding of what that means to me. We do look department by department at what our services are. I think some people mean core services review to mean should the city be operating a particular service, to ask the community to think about whether or not certain functions belong in the city's domain. We not only do that on a regular basis, but we had a part of our community consultation this year was to ask people about service reductions in most areas. The feedback we received is that people were very eager to make sure we did not reduce those services. But sometimes people are also talking about zero-based or line-by-line budgeting, and that's done at a departmental level. It is highly consumptive of resources. It would probably cost us more than $150,000 to bring in a consultant to look at core services review, and that was done a few years ago here, and quite frankly, I'm not sure there was value in it. So, folks, the services your city operates are just like every other service out there. They're affected by not only inflation, but by growing and changing demands. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to provide value for the money. We get asked two things at council quite frequently. One is, can you provide this service or build this thing? And the other is, can you reduce taxes? And it's about keeping those two things in balance. And $150,000 to the average home is what 6.19% will look like. I'm not thrilled about that either, and I wish it was lower, but at the same time, I think council went through in a very careful way over a number of months to make sure that we got it right and didn't cut more than we needed to and didn't leave our community in a bad position for the future.
Did you talk about the Sophie?
Oh, Sophie. People if you want to have good staff, you have to pay them what the market rate is. Every couple of years within our community, we ask for a review of current market rates for senior administrative staff. These are people with highly technical skills. They are in high demand. And as I mentioned earlier, we've already had a bad trend in our community over years, bringing people in, having them develop here within our community, and then losing them to larger communities with bigger budgets. We're never going to be able probably to compete against the Coquitlams, Burnabys, Vancouvers, and Surreys of the world, but certainly we can do what we can to try and create an employer experience that makes people want to stay with us. It's not always about money. It's about being engaged in the experience and feeling like you're part of something that really is innovative and important and making a difference in people's lives. It's about having a voice, and it's about feeling safe and valued as a staff person in our city. But also it's about people being able to earn a wage that is comparable to what they would get if they went across the river or a few miles to our west. And so unfortunately, folks, those are expensive. That's an expense that's real for our city. It's no question about it, but it is what the market demands that we pay people these days. And if we were to try and pay people less, then we would have a very difficult time recruiting and retaining people.
Okay, and back to secondary suites. We've had a few questions on secondary suites. So if you don't mind, Mayor Horn, I would like to plug our information session that we have on 1 week today. We're hosting a secondary suites program information session on Wednesday, December 13th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Boswick Center. It's drop-in style, and staff will be there to answer your questions one-on-one. So if you have questions, it's a great place to go.
Yeah, and I think what these questions are telling me, I'm very happy to hear that people are asking, because it suggests that folks are interested in the program. And what I'm going to suggest is that, Taryn, we either do one of two things or maybe combine them, and that is that we have an information session similar to this just on that subject and record some of the FAQs, or perhaps take the FAQs, the questions you're getting right now, and put them into a video presentation for folks who can't be at the in-person session. So either way, we'll want to make sure that information's out, and it's online right now as well, correct?
Yes, it is. It's
so
on
we'll
our website.
take the questions we're having and increase the amount of information on the written side of things as well. But that's great. Anything I need to answer on that, or I think they probably mostly of a technical nature.
They're more technical. However, there was a question from somebody that's more higher level, from council level,
Sure.
Related to exemptions, and the request that we change the program so family can house disabled children without additional taxation, and if there was thoughts surrounding that.
Yes, there is. So what council was asked about, and it really was extremely cumbersome. Staff were asking us about a process of actually phasing out exemptions, and we did not want to do that. And they have issues at their end because they cannot do a whole heck of a lot to inquire and find out whether or not somebody living in your suite is related to you in some way. And then it gets into this whole series of things that I think cities should not be involved in, of value judging what you mean by a family member, and whether or not somebody should be in your home because they're a child, and if they're 18, should you lose your exemption, and a whole bunch of other logistical things. We took the perspective that we want everybody to have an affordable home. And so whether your home is full of relatives or whether your home is full of people who are from different families doesn't matter to us. So we're moving to a different approach, which is, instead of having double billing, we want to phase out double billing, which will make it so that you no longer need to have exemptions on the double billing schema. So that's what's coming next. The work we did on Monday evening was to change the zoning bylaw and begin this registration process. But we're moving out of the process of requiring people to do exemptions, and instead making it so that we normalize the cost of our utilities across our homes in the community, so that there's a more honest accounting of what it costs to provide those services.
Thank you very much. Now we have a question related to the Wren Street Bridge, and if one is being put in. And if so, will the sewer pipe up to Nelson Street be upgraded too?
The Wren Street Bridge, I actually don't have that exact update right now, and I'm sorry I don't. Do you happen to know, or we'll have to put it out on the update? So I don't know exactly the answer to that question, and the connection, I'm not sure I understand the question about the sewer pipe to Nelson via the Wren Street Bridge, but
Something that we can look into
we'll
with
look into it. I
engineering
think that
staff.
the question of whether or not, yeah, I'll get staff to look into that because I'm not sure of the answer. It's in a technical realm.
Okay. And there's also a question related to the recent news about the upgrades around Murray Street bypass and the intersection, and if there are any plans to help reduce congestion around Stave Lake Street at Lougheed, to help with all the traffic from Deroche, Dudney, and Hatzick that some days go all the way to the co-op.
Yes, there's two things that will happen. The first one is, as part of that, from what I understand, with the new truck accommodations for trucks, there'll be an enhanced stacking capacity, and so more opportunities for people who are turning left to be out of the way for people who are going straight into the downtown. And then, as I said earlier, the transportation study is going to resume the idea that we would have a connection from no longer coming all that way down to Murray Street to get down to the south. So that should take traffic who want to head to Abbotsford or bypass the downtown. And they should, when that's designed, I would expect it to be up in the area of Norrish Avenue, which is roughly where, across the road from where St. Mary's is right now. So that should take a lot of pressure off of that intersection. I still will have some concerns about that intersection because we know that there's density up the hill. And so I would anticipate that as a council, we'll need to look at that as well in terms of how the traffic that is going down south on Stave Lake Street will move so that they don't have further delays there. I know I don't personally like going to that intersection after about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's something I'll make sure that I raise with our transportation our engineering department as well. But the highway side of things will be incorporated in those two projects.
Perfect. And we've had this question come up a couple times regarding the 11th Avenue Townhouse Complex proposal and whether or not that is going to be approved or what's happening with that.
11th Avenue Townhouse proposal. I'm not sure which one they're referencing. 11th. I'm not sure which one is being referenced there.
I'll ask them and then we can go on to the next
Okay,
question
sounds
and
good.
get more details from them. The next question is related to some of the new information from the province related to housing, especially the new housing legislation where properties can be rezoned to have more units in them, as well as multifamily areas being close to buses and rapid transit and that transit-orientated neighborhoods. And so the question is, talking about OCP, does that undermine our neighborhood plans, our waterfront plans, and how is that going to work without these types of projects needing to go to public hearing for city approval?
Fabulous question. And the answer is, I would say that it certainly creates a demand for us to go back and look at those documents. And the timing, we're lucky because our OCP is being reviewed. There are some communities I spoke with who had just finished doing it, and then they had this information and they have to reopen the document. But the questioner is asking a very insightful question, because when you think about where you locate buses and schools and parks and underground services, and even the way you move traffic through your community, it's based on density. I think it's pressure, but I think it's pressure we can work with because the urban growth boundary is really where they've asked for us to do this 4 and 6 unit development. Four units in areas that are not on highly serviced transit routes and 6 on others that are. But at this point, we're still waiting for more information. We have the next year to try and bring our policies in line, and we're applying for funding to help add to our staffing to help do that. The province has given us funding, created a fund for that. They haven't given it to us yet. But that is a real question. It's one that I will have my eyes on very much as well. I think when it comes to the waterfront, actually, it's a very positive thing because the waterfront is at this point still a very open page in terms of how we might develop. And so transit-oriented development does not apply to our West Coast Express station. I asked about this at this point, but it could, and I want it to, because I want us to have a very robust, very comprehensive transit hub down there that connects heavy rail, rapid buses, people who are parking, riding, active transportation, as well as our regular city buses and paratransit and custom transit. So I think we'll end up getting to that, and you'll see people thinking car share services that'll all intersect in that way of life. So I actually think it is exciting, and this is part of why I think Minister Fleming is so aware of what the waterfront potential is, plus the fact that we can do it in partnership with existing businesses and with First Nations is also a really appealing thing. So I think that will be actually a major opportunity. But yes, it's a question we definitely need to deal with, and there's still a lot that's not known, and that's creating some challenges for us. When people bring in an application and ask for a property that's going to be, let's say, 2 duplexes, are we actually approving something that's 4 units? Would we be better to have the person apply to have 4 units and to design it accordingly? So as much as this is intended to accelerate housing in our province, there are some ways that it's actually creating some delays or questions for us. And one of the other ones I'll point out is that we're likely to see a change in the way our public engagement happens. Now, for the most part, I'm supportive of this. I think the idea that we've taken here is that we have asked developers to engage in what we pioneered last year called a neighborhood approach. And we've done this for about a year we started in September of 2022. It's coming back for review. And it's one of the things I'm proudest of, because neighborhoods are getting input in developments early on. And if they don't get that input, then as you saw the other night at a public hearing where there wasn't really good input, the public hearing was not a success from the developer's perspective. So we're insisting on that early engagement. Well, now the province is essentially going to make that the law. They're going to basically get rid of public hearings for anything that's an OCP compliant application, but they're going to require developers to engage with the community early on. So we're a bit ahead of the game on that one, and that's good news, and we'll take a little bit off our plate in terms of how we deal with some of these uncertainties. What's next?
Okay, so for the 11th Avenue question about the townhouse complex, this question is related to a public hearing that is coming up on December 18th. And it's a public hearing process.
Oh, okay.
For
I wondered because
71816 Dunsmuir.
So, the Dunsmuir and 11th Avenue complex. The question asked me where it is, but the answer actually knows where it is. The answer is it's coming for a public hearing, so it'll be an opportunity for community input in the next few days here on the 18th of December. We have worked considerably with the Neighborhood Association and with the developer, who have met multiple times. And the original application, I think, has been amended a couple of times to demonstrate how they incorporated community input. And from my perspective, it seems like a good example of how the neighborhood and a developer have worked collaboratively there to make sure that natural assets and design features and community connectivity have all been built into it at this point. But it's the reason that I wanted to make sure which one it is here is that it's coming before us for public hearing. And so I really will be waiting to hear community input, and we are legally obligated as a council to keep an open mind. And so there hasn't been a decision on that. The decision has been to bring it to public hearing, but I'm looking forward to hearing more about that one.
Hey, this is related to the medic truck, which you touched earlier in the presentation, but the question is about the staffing and if we are staffing at 24/7.
We're not. It will take us some time to recruit more members, and it will take us more time to be able to kind of flesh out the operation of it all throughout the year. But no, we aren't. And the firefighters, just like every other career right now, are having difficulty finding enough people. And we are going through the process constantly of training people internally, but no, it's staffed right now part-time, and we'll see that bolster over 2024.
Related to the Mission Library, we have a question about this building, the facility, and whether there are plans to renovate it to be more accessible, if there's any plans with that.
I'm not aware of any imminent plans to renovate the library right now. I'll certainly follow up with Councillor Plekas, who sits on that, on the regional library board, but I'm not aware of anything specific at the library. What I am aware of is that the council recently gave third reading to a development that is happening on a small lot that most people won't even realize is a lot, and it's between the existing parking lot of the library and Horn Street. As part of that, there'll be a parkade constructed, and the parkade will include the following: parking for the people who live in the building, parking for the businesses at the front and bottom of it, and public parking. So we're having an additional number of parking spaces that'll be added both at the library level and off Horn Street that'll serve the community in that area. And then as part of that, the developer's contribution will get used to enhance the park area. The Lane Creek Parkway will be enhanced, and at the end of it, we'll be building a small park that will include an outdoor facility for the library, including a sort of a reading amphitheater for story time and some children's play equipment and so forth. So we were happy with this project because not only did it bring another business and more housing to the downtown core, but it addressed two issues we've been asked about a lot, which were to enhance parking and to give us, to have more park space downtown. So it's not going to be a huge park, but that outdoor amenity will be there. I'm not aware of any internal renovation of the library in the future right now.
Okay, that is pretty much all the questions that we have right now.
Well, there's one that nobody asked that I would like to talk about, which is land clearing, because I meant to mention it earlier, and I should also talk, I think I did talk about park acquisition. The land clearing program will be coming to council soon for public input, and so we're very optimistic about the way this is looking as well. It's been a major issue for the community that we're seeing so many properties being cleared in advance of being sold to developers. So we've heard that loud and clear, so look for that in the next little while, and there'll be an opportunity for public engagement in that. The idea is really that if the folks who are already following the correct processes won't see any difference at all. People who come in and they go through our environmental department before they do things like destabilize slopes or move trees or clear away vegetation that might be sensitive habitat. Those folks will continue as they have, doing it in accordance with our processes, but others will be affected in ways that will lead to enforcement as well as potential impacts on how fast they can develop their properties. So I want to also give a nod to the Environmental Charter Advisory Committee that's been named. We approved the Environmental Charter, and now we have a committee that is actively putting in place the charter elements through that body. So I'll add that as well. Now, any other questions that have come up since I was rambling on there?
No, there's a few questions related to 7th Avenue Greenway and to the trade show in France that we've already discussed earlier in the Q&A. So I just wanted to mention that this video will be available on our Facebook page, so you can go back and listen to all the questions, as well as our YouTube channel.
Yep, absolutely. Anything that we didn't answer related to those things? Okay, so yeah, I would encourage people to go back and listen to that stuff for sure. And if there's nothing further, we'll move on to our last two slides. And have Shay bring those back up. Excellent, thank you. So the last two slides. First, I just want to make sure people are aware that this coming Saturday, there is a holiday open house at the Leisure Centre. So we really encourage you to come down and join everybody in the community. You'll have the opportunity to swim and skate, and those are free, correct, Taryn, this year? Are they free?
The swimming and skating will have a fee to it, but there's a lot of activities that are free.
Okay. Festive music, crafts, pancakes, and a visit with Santa, and you can come down. So I missed the second line there. This year isn't free. And you also, if you want to, you can come see Santa from 11 till 2 this coming Saturday at Gallery 202 as a fundraiser for Interact. Bring your pets for a photo with Santa. And we have a number of events going on in the community, so please do get out and enjoy and contribute to the Mission Christmas Bureau and other charities this Christmas. On a personal note, I have put links on all of my social media to a quiz I put out, and I like to do this every year as a fundraiser. It's about mission. If you get 5 or more answers correct, I'll put $5 towards charity, and if you get less than 5, then you are committing to give $1 per wrong answer to local charities. I'll warn you, it's tough. The average score is about 3.5, but do what you can to give to local charities in our community, please. Hopefully we've answered a number of questions for you this evening. It has been an interesting year. We'll call it a challenging year, but it's been a year where a ton of work is being done. Next year, you should start to see some shovels in the ground on some major initiatives, and particularly some improvements around parks. And we will be back in front of you in the next few months with another one of these, or come and see us at a council cafe. You can always email me at phorn@mission.ca. And spending less time on social media and Facebook these days than ever, but you can certainly reach out to me by email. That's the most fast and efficient way to do that. And if you communicate with other counselors, they bring the message to me as well. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we'll see you next time.